Good morning, folks. Welcome to this press conference with the chair of the Committee on Migrant Workers, Mr. John Ünver, and also the Special Rapporteur on the Human Rights of Migrants, Mr. Felipe González Morales. We'll start with some short introductory remarks from Mr. González Morales, and then we'll have some short introductory remarks from Mr. Ünver, and then we'll move on to questions from you. So please go ahead, Mr. González Morales.
Thank you very much. Good morning. I'm here to present my annual report to the General Assembly this afternoon, which is going to be focused on the issue of gender and migration, and also with mentions about the follow-up of the Global Compact on Migration and on hate speech. These are some of the most important topics that have been addressed over the last year. I have produced two thematic reports on the situation of women and girls regarding migration. For this purpose, I have analyzed the international situation in this regard, the international legal framework, as well as good practices and remaining challenges for states to address the human rights violations of migrant women and girls. There are many structural problems that need to be addressed. Some states have moved forward in this regard. In our cases, less initiatives have been taken, so I'm encouraging states to take further actions in this respect with a strong participation from the civil society and international agencies as well. On the issue of hate speech, I have released an open letter that more than 20 special rapporteurs and independent experts from the United Nations on human rights have recently issued. I convened the experts to sign this open letter to all states of the United Nations because there is a very worrisome trend of hate speech in many countries around the world. In this respect, it is very important that states, especially at the highest level, refrain from having an inflammatory xenophobic discourse, and they should instead promote all initiatives to avoid this worrisome trend to expand in the societies. Finally, regarding the follow-up and implementation on the Global Compact on Migration, as you know, it was adopted 10 months ago by the General Assembly, and we are in the first stages of this follow-up and implementation. My mandate, along with other special procedures, are engaging with the UN Network on Migration to ensure that this instrument become effective and really the Global Compact on Migration strengthen the protection of the human rights of migrants around the world. Thank you.
So, thank you very much, and good morning. Well, international migration is a very complex phenomenon involving overlapping issues that affect human rights of migrants and all other people. The management of migration flows, international protection, smuggling and trafficking of migrants, as well as other factors affecting population movements, call for the implementation of a comprehensive approach that puts the human rights of migrants first. Well, we have right now, according to UN population unit, 258 million people on the move. It's a big number. And our convention, the only legally binding convention pertinent to migrants' rights, is the most comprehensive and instrument dealing with the rights of migrant workers. Well, other international instruments also impact on the rights of migrant workers or deal with related issues. However, our convention has direct impacts on human rights as a whole. We have a broad scope which is being clarified, which has been clarified in the course of time by general comments and by the implementation and reviews of the country reports and so on. And our convention looks forward to working with states and partners, all stakeholders, civil society, the national human rights institutions, through its recommendations and general comments to enhance the improvement and compliance of the human rights. Well, we are faced through certain challenges. This is true. There is a need of close contacts with all state parties just before the review of the country reports. Well, we decided to review in every fourth year the country reports, and in this year, in two sessions, 30th and 31st sessions, we had 7 countries, as far as I know, and we tried to establish closer contacts and cooperative actions between other treaty bodies and also with the states parties, and we are trying to enhance more dialogue. And this is, of course, not an easy task, because there is a need of the change of philosophy, approaches to international migration, especially to the safeguard for the safeguarding of the human rights of migrants, migrant workers and members of their families. This comprehensive convention of ours is unfortunately the least ratified convention in the UN system. This is, of course, something we have to overcome. As the committee, we try to face this challenge, and we try to make activities on the way to promotion of our convention. We have right now 55 ratifying states. In comparison to other treaties, it's less, of course. This is the one challenge. The other one is the compliance of the states parties, and we have to support them. We have to assist them for the better implementation of the provisions of our convention. Those two fields are our most important activity fields, so to say. And, well, we are optimistic. I must say that we are optimistic because this is the only binding, legal binding instrument. And we have to keep it and we have to promote it just for the sake of the human rights of all migrant workers and their families. And the comprehensive approach is that even irregular migrants are also covered by the convention, and that means that makes the convention even more necessary, just to enhance the implementations with respect to human rights of all migrants, not only migrant workers. So thank you very much.
Thanks for those remarks. We'll now open it up to questions. Evelyn, I see you have a question. Yeah.
Welcome to the briefing on behalf of the UN Correspondents Association. I'm Evelyn Leopold. I have a couple questions. First, for Mr. González Morales. You have, what are some examples, what are your main points of women and girls in the migration saga? You say that they're affected most. Can you give us examples? And then you have good practices. Can you, whenever either of you give examples, can you mention countries, regions, so we don't just think it's everything from Marshall Islands to the United States? Can you give some examples of the places that you find the best or the worst? Thank you.
Well, at this point, there has been a feminization of migration, so about half or even more than half of the persons in mobility are women, and this has an impact on the migration policies as well. I would say that there are many types of violations that affect migrant women. But for instance, some of the practices, the bad practices by states that, of course, have an impact on men, migrant men, have a stronger bad impact on women. This is the case, for instance, of the detention based on migratory grounds, which is very extended in many countries. Also, that's a point. Also, I would say there are restrictions in some countries regarding the requests for asylum based on allegations of being prosecuted in their countries, women, because of being victims of domestic or violence. This has been a controversial issue also here in the United States. I would add also the situation of migrant women who are domestic workers, who are often without a significant support, nor they have access to justice or to consular assistance, really. So they become isolated, especially in some countries, and they don't get support for their complaints. On the positive side, I think there is an increasing conscience of states about the situation of migrant women. I would stress the fact that in a number of cities, I would say more than countries, there has been firewalls established. So, for instance, all migrant, but especially in the case of women, for instance, for the issue of reproductive health and other health rights, can go to a hospital without being afraid of, even if they're in a regular situation, without being afraid that they would be denounced to the migration authorities. This is a situation in the so-called sanctuary cities here in the United States, or in California as a state, and in a number of cities in Europe. I'm emphasizing this as a situation of cities rather than states as a whole. I think it's very important to enhance this in general, to separate the access to health, to education, to justice from the work that the migration agencies play. I think that is an important issue. And second, I would like to stress the fact that some countries, not many yet, are moving forward to take an active response to the situation of migrant women. That is not only prohibiting discrimination as a general matter, but also taking active steps in this regard.
Yes. Can you remind us of your second question?
Do you have statistics? Sorry. Do you have statistics on how many migrants in which areas, and also did the Conference on Migration produce any signatories?
We have, of course, statistics, and the majority of our member states are from the South, from the global South. And those countries who ratified or acceded to the convention are mainly sending countries. And, some of them are also receiving countries and transit countries. We have, from different institutions, also statistics from OECD, from IOM, from ILO, and so on. About 158 million migrant workers are right now, or 57 million migrant workers are right now in countries where they are not born. They're working in those countries. It's a big number, of course, and the rest of them are refugees. The global refugee problem everywhere, especially in the region where I'm grown up, in Middle East, in Turkey. This is, of course, a big challenge for the countries, for sending countries and for receiving countries. And the global compact on migration, you meant this, I think. A global compact on migration, which was signed in Marrakesh last December, yes, is an important step forward, I must say. And it can be complementary for our convention also, although it's only soft law, just to say. But, well, in this age of multiple migrations in the world, we needed such an instrument. It's not a very, effective instrument right now, but with its important points, 22 or 23 principles, which are overlapping with the principles of our convention. We hope to move forward for the human rights of all migrants, not only migrant workers. So,
did we have other questions from the floor? No? Okay, so just since we still have a few minutes, I wondered if maybe Mr. González Morales, would you tell us maybe a little bit, I'll ask you a question, if you can tell us about the biggest challenges that are facing you in your work as Special Rapporteur?
Well, as you may imagine, it's an overwhelmed task really to address the situation of migrants around the world. My mandate has a universal jurisdiction, so this includes all countries from the UN. I have been conducting country visits and in different regions. I think it's very important that countries agree to my visits. I have insisted on several occasions with the United States to conduct a visit here, to not avail so far. I hope this becomes a reality at some point. I think that having a full possibility of monitoring the situation of migrants is very important. I think there is a worrisome trend of criminalization in many countries, criminalization of irregular migration, and also increasing restrictions on the rights of regular migrants in a number of countries. And also, as I mentioned before, the worrisome trend of hate speech. I think, however, that there are strong initiatives also to promote and advance the human rights of migrants. I see a number of states in this regard, and I see a much stronger civil society working for the human rights of migrants than in the past. I think an important challenge is to continue strengthening the role of multilateral initiatives. And it's in this regard that I welcome the Global Compact on Migration, not only for its contents, but also because it is a multilateral initiative without any precedent on the issue of migration. And this has been reproduced to some extent in all the regions of the world, but it doesn't mean that automatically the states will follow the rules of these conventions or agreements. I think there are many asymmetries in the policies on migration of the countries. So my challenge is to try to call state to have systematic policies on migration that are compatible with the human rights of migrants.
Thank you. Did we have further questions? Yeah, please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Inji Magzi from Egypt, Yom Saba newspaper. My question about workers' abuse in Qatar. How do you deal with this problem? Because after more than 2 years of reports about death between workers, there is no international response to the issue.
So thank you for the question. Well, Qatar is not a member, it's a states party to our convention. I don't know what to say about this, but the situation in the Gulf countries, there are some big problems over there. We try to convince these countries also to take part at our convention, to be part of our convention. Otherwise, there's no big possibility to give any effective support to migrant workers living out there in those countries. That's it.
If I may say
Please,
so.
add something.
Yes, well, I haven't received complaints specifically about the situations that you mentioned. However, my office has followed up the situation in Qatar. My predecessor conducted an official visit a number of years ago to Qatar. And we also received some complaints and we sent communications to Qatar and Saudi Arabia after the boycott against Qatar. Especially regarding the situation of Qataris in Saudi Arabia that were expelled from there, but not on the issues of the specific issue that you mentioned. And on other countries of the Middle East, Kuwait accepted a request for a visit that I did, so it is very likely that it will take place next year. And of course, these country reports also look at the situation in the regional context because the mandate is about international migration. So mentions to our countries in the regions are going to be made at the report.
Okay, thanks everyone for. Please go ahead. Last comments.
Well, I want to extend our thanks to Mr. Felipe Morales González for the great cooperation with our committee. Last year or this year there had been some common actions together with my predecessor, Mr. Tal, and we appreciate it so much, and also with other bodies of the UN in the UN system. There's good cooperation, and we are going to continue this cooperation for the sake of the human rights of migrant workers and their families. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming. Thanks to you.